Tom, our next question is something I'd like you to expand on and tell us what you mean by this quote of yours. Your little picture pain will turn into big picture joy. Can you explain the idea and
Absolutely.
concept around that?
I
Thank you.
know exactly how your little picture pain can turn into big picture joy, and that is by getting rid of your fear. Fear puts you in a little picture. If you're very fearful, then your focus in your life is on those things you fear. And most of the other things in your life kind of are not in your immediate perception. You just focus on the things you fear. Now, most people's fears are not, you know, they're not, what can we say? They're not a real thing. They're smoke and mirrors. They're beliefs that they've had since they were, 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years old. They get these beliefs for reasons that nobody in their environment, even notices. Little tiny things happen, and they'll take a kind of a mistaken sense of why something happened because they're only 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years old. They don't really have understandings of why things go on, but they make up stories. And they make up a story that says that they are not deserving or that they're not good enough or whatever it is. And then they carry that fear around with them their whole lifetime. And that fear, along with their other fears, tends to make their choices. When it's time to make a choice, that fear is the thing that decides what the choice is going to be. Oh, I'm afraid of socializing because I don't feel very competent. So, oh, I've just been invited to a party. My choice is no, I can't go. Well, the fear made the choice, you see. So that's the problem. We end up choosing our way through life based on our fears. Fears make the choices for us. Those fears cause us pain. They are the source of almost all of our pain. Yes, you can have physical pain because your kidney's not functioning, and that will give you pain. But this is emotional pain, mental pain, and that kind of pain that's emotional and mental can also then turn into physical pain. Matter of fact, it usually does turn into physical pain. So even though it didn't start with a physical cause, it can create physical causes of pain. So fear is kind of the enemy. It's the negative. It's the stuff that gives us pain, gives us problems, ruins our relationships. And fear keeps you trapped in a little picture because all your focus goes on the pain and the hurt, and very little of your focus goes on anything else. So you're trapped in this little picture, just you and your pain. The more you dwell on it, the more you kind of wallow in self-pity about your pain, then the smaller and smaller your picture gets, to where pretty soon you're diagnosed as depressed and you have a hard time functioning in the world. Now, if you can let go of that pain, if you can dismiss those fears, get rid of them, neutralize them, then what will happen is that your picture of the world will start to expand. Other people will come into the picture. It won't be just about you. There will be others, and that you'll have good relationships with those others if you've gotten rid of your fears. If you're still fearful, well, you'll probably not have good relations with those others, except maybe very superficially, but it probably won't run very deep because if you have fears, that gets in the way of relationships too. So anyway, as you get rid of your fear, your picture broadens. And when your picture broadens, you begin to see a bigger world than just you and your needs and your wants and the things that you cannot live without. And when with that bigger picture comes things like joy, happiness, peace, satisfaction. All those things are to be found in this bigger reality without your fear. So the letting go of fear is a way to change little picture pain and suffering into big picture happiness and joy. Because once you get rid of that fear, your life will be full of joy. You get rid of the fear and don't make any new fears to replace them, then when you are, you may not be fearless, but if you have at least most of your fears under control, you'll have more and more joy come into your life, more and more happiness. Almost everything you need for happiness and satisfaction will fall at your feet just as you need them. It's almost magical the way that works, but life becomes very good. So that transition requires you to, one, discover what are my fears? Why do I make the choices that I make? And if you want to know whether you actually have a problem with your fears or not, here's a good way to tell. Look at everything that's happened to you, everything you've felt for the last week, just the last 7 days. And within that 7 days, if you felt anything that was negative, upset, annoyed, angry, not understood, et cetera, et cetera, these are all negative things. If you have felt anything negative, then that means you have fear. If you haven't felt anything negative, that your last week is just all joy, peace, and loveliness, then you probably don't have much fear and you're already kind of on your way to living in a bigger picture. But if you're like most people, you can't even go a day without being annoyed at something, upset at something, shaking your fist at something, unhappy about somebody doing something. And it's hard to get, for most people, it's hard to get through an hour without doing something negative. We take one look at the news and we start getting angry. How could those people do that? How could they think that way? They must be really stupid. So we get negative, we get angry, we get upset, we get annoyed, and all of that shows us that there's fear inside there. So that's a test. Take a look at your week. Anytime you get annoyed with something, well, that shows you got some fear. If you've got some fear, then you need to get rid of it. How do you get rid of it? The best way and the easiest way is to really, really want to get rid of it. And that is not necessarily trivial for most people. Most people, instead of really getting rid of their fear, they just take their fear and they stuff it under the rug where nobody can see it. They hide it. And when they feel like being upset, they smile instead. That forced grin that people get when they're not really happy, but they're trying to pretend that they're happy. Well, that isn't what I'm talking about. That won't get rid of your fear. That will perpetuate your fear. You can't stuff it under the rug or just push it out of sight or smile when you feel like, complaining.
Do you think, Tom, that that's somewhat of a comfort that those fears become comfortable? They
Oh
become a
my, yes.
go-to. Yes?
They become part of your lifestyle. They
Okay.
become part of the way you are. They define you in large measure. They become the core of your personality,
So that's even
even.
tougher to get rid of because, yeah,
Yes.
everybody has everyday annoyances and little, those kinds of things. But that core fear, that is a friend. That is a comfort. Um, I
Well, that's
I
the way you are. Like
I've noticed.
a lot of people, let's say, complain. They spend a lot of time complaining. And matter of fact, they get to the point that almost everything they say is in the form of a complaint. If it doesn't rise up to the point of complaining about it, it's not worth talking about. So they only speak when they have something to complain about. And yes, that defines a personality. That defines a person. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't make jokes about what they're complaining about. They can. It doesn't mean they sit around and cry all day. It just means that they tend to be negative when they speak. They tend to complain a lot. Well, that is very very well integrated into their ego, into their psyche, into their own vision of who they are and what they are. And they do a lot of that complaining because that shows to the world that they're better than what they're complaining about, that they're superior to what they're complaining about. And that helps make them feel better about themselves, because the real problem is they don't feel real positive about themselves because they've got this fear, you see. So that helps them. That's a strategy to feel better about yourself. You complain about other people, kind of putting other people down to make yourself feel more right and more correct. So yes, it becomes integral parts of our personality, of the way we are, the way we interact with other people. And it turns out to be the root source of most all of our distress and unhappiness and anguish and annoyance and too much stomach acid and, not being particularly healthy, and then having other kind of health problems. And, it just becomes the root of a whole lot of unpleasant stuff, which then adds to the things to complain about, which then makes you feel worse, which then gives you more things to complain about. So it can get
This
into
sounds
a vicious cycle. And
sure.
many people are in that. They live in that space
Live in the
of
space.
negativity
Mhm.
and complaining. And their friends are that way, and their spouses are that way, and their children are that way. And it's just almost permeates all of their
Is
aware
that very
space.
hard to reach then? That's a lot harder to
Mm-hmm.
reach. You would have to
It
um,
is.
really
They'd
be
have,
aware of this is not how you'd like to spend the rest of your life. You
right,
really don't want to be in this space,
right.
and you'd have to start with that,
Right, you
um,
do. That's why I say
recognizing it.
the hardest thing is to come to the decision that you really want to change, because it is hard to see that you need to change. So you come to this decision, I want to change. I don't want to be this way. Not, I don't want to act this way. It's not about acting, but I don't want to be this way. And if you really are serious about that and you really don't want to be that way, it'll change. It'll change all by itself. You really don't have to do anything special. All you have to do is really be serious about wanting to change. And if you say, well, I'd like to change, it would be a good thing if I changed, I should change, none of that'll take you anywhere. You have to really say, I want change. I don't want to be that way. Then you have a chance of changing. But it still may take a year or two for you to change, because you've probably had 20 or 30 years of being negative. So it doesn't just change on a dime. It's habitual. It's, you won't have anything to say. It's like, if I can't say something negative, I don't have anything to say at all. It's that sort of thing. It will be difficult for a while, but if you really want to, that's the key to getting rid of the fear, is to really want to get rid of the fear. And if you do that, you will find that you smile more, life is lighter, easier, happier. There's less problems that you have to deal with, because most of the negative stuff in our life is stuff that we create because of our own fears. We're creating all that junk, and then it upsets us, and we get angry about it, but we've created it to begin with. So
You have to test drive the results of letting go of some of that. Test it and see what happens. Is everything better because of it?
right,
Or is it better because of hanging on to it? And that that makes quite a difference, I have noticed.
yes.
If you see the more positive way of looking at something. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I think you expanded on your quote very well, and thanks so much.
I and MBT Events hope you like this video. If you do, then you should consider being a Patreon member, because Patreon members get early access to our special content. You will also be able to get your questions answered by me in special Q&A sessions, and most importantly, your contribution as a patron member will enable us to produce the content that you're looking for. So thank you.